Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Beaumont City Council regular council meeting for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 here at 6 o'clock here in council chambers. Usually it's the best seat in town of city council. We've got an audience today. So I'm not sure if I missed something on the agenda or there's something I'm not aware of coming down the pipe. So we'll see what happens here. In the meantime, we'll get started with our land acknowledgement. And as we always do, the city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether it be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. We have two proclamations this evening, which I'll read now at this point. National Indigenous Peoples Day, June 21st, 2024. Whereas Beaumont was settled and built on traditional lands and territories of the First Nations of peoples, the homeland of the Métis, and part of the greater Edmonton area, the region is a place where Inuit and people of the North come to receive services and connect with family, friends, and neighbors. And whereas every summer solstice is a sacred time for Indigenous peoples and communities across Canada to celebrate in ceremony, culture and tradition, and teachings, it also marked the time for all people living in Canada to acknowledge that many contributions Indigenous peoples have made and continue to make through knowledge, law, labor, spirituality, technology, science, philosophy, art, health, and wellness. And whereas National Indigenous Peoples Day is an opportunity to acknowledge the trauma that was caused by the attempts to assimilate and colonize the original peoples of this land, while also recognizing the resilience and strength of Indigenous peoples to continue connecting with their culture, and heritage despite our dark shared history and the systematic racism that still exists today. And whereas the city of Beaumont is committed to, as allies, to assist Indigenous peoples in reclaiming their culture and traditions while making room for Indigenous voices within our structures and at decision-making tables to ensure equity and equality for Indigenous peoples going forward. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Dallek, do hereby proclaim June 21st, 2024 as National Indigenous Peoples Day in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 11th of June, 2024. Next proclamation is Beaumont Music Week. That ring a bell for some people in the crowd? Beaumont Music Week, June 16th to 22nd, 2024. Whereas Beaumont has long been a vibrant hub of creativity, nurturing local talent and embracing diverse musical genres, and whereas the Beaumont Music Festival is approaching its 17th year, and this week will celebrate all of the amazing musical talent within our city, highlighted by the musical festival on June 21st and 22nd. And whereas there has been a long-standing partnership between the city of Beaumont and the Beaumont Musical Festival, as we celebrate 17 years of support for what started as a Town of Beaumont Promotions Committee event back in 2008. The growth of both the city and the festival over those 17 years, with the festival now getting recognition as a national level, are achievements that we can all be proud of. And whereas Beaumont Music Week is an opportunity to celebrate the richness of our local music scene, showcase the talents of our musicians, and encourage residents and visitors alike to enjoy the experience of live music performances. And now, therefore, let it be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Dallek, do hereby proclaim June 16th to 22nd, 2024 as Beaumont Music Week in the city of Beaumont, dated 11th of June, 2024. Another clap for proclamation before never been clap for proclamation. That's awesome. All right, next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any change to our agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Administration does not have any additions or deletions this evening.
Thank you. Would you please put the agenda motion on the screen, please? Ask member of council to move the agenda as presented. Councillor Barnhart. Oh, I got your mic on for you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to move that the June 11th, 2024 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion of the motion, members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the agenda? That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. Next on our agenda is open forum. Madam Clerk, any open forum guests this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any open forum presentations.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Would you please put the consent agenda, Madam Clerk, on the screen, please? I'll ask you to read through the consent agenda, please. I'll see any changes are requested by council once you've read through the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 4, consent agenda, that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5.1, the regular council meeting minutes. that council accept the meeting minutes of the May 28th, 2024 regular council meeting as presented. 6.5, the childcare bus program, that the June 11th, 2024 report, childcare bus program report be received for information. Item 6.6, senior snow clearing, that a one-pager for developing and implementing snow clearing services for low-income seniors be included in the 2025 budget deliberations. Item 6.7, appointments to the Yellowhead Regional Library Board, that Councillor Penrod be appointed to the Yellowhead Regional Library Board for a term ending at the 2025 Organizational Council meeting, provided that he continues to serve as councillor throughout the term of his appointment. Item 6.8, amendments to the council meeting schedule, that the regularly scheduled council meeting for November 27th, 2024 be amended by changing the start time from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. and that the prescribed notice be provided to members of council and the public. Item 6.9, appointment to the Regional Assessment Review Board clerk, that Sandy Bujaya be appointed as clerk for the Regional Assessment Review Board for a term starting on June 11th, 2024 and ending on August 31st, 2024. And item 6.10, extension request, Council Policy C14 Purchasing Policy Update, that by the end of the first quarter 2024, administration conduct a review of Policy C14 Purchasing Policy and provide a report on possible updates and enhancements, including such as greater clarity on definitions and more detail on various processes such as requirements to attain bids and the public calls are required and the audit process of compliance. The new revised date is September 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remove number 6.5, the childcare bus. Thank you.
Perfect. I'd like to move the motion that the consent agenda be accepted as presented.
Councillor? Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on the amended consent agenda? That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda is 6.1, Arts Advisory Committee Annual Report. I believe Ms. Vera and Mr. Suter are presenting this evening. Your microphone is on, and look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Suter, Director of Community Services. I'm pleased to be here this evening with the Vice Chair of the Arts Advisory Committee, Ms. Sherry Vera. As per the bylaw 1039-23, the Arts Advisory Committee is required to provide an annual update to Council. This is a new initiative that we started this year, trying to get the committee's work to be more front and center in the minds of Council and the public, to see all the good work and conversations that are going on in the background. Part of the mandate for that committee is to review arts grants and to recommend allocations to Council and provide strategic guidance and recommendations on integrating art into Beaumont's public spaces, strategies for promoting local artists, and strengthening community identity and civic pride through diverse artistic expression. I won't go over the entire terms of reference. However, part of the work is to identify and engage stakeholders, seek their input on the work of the committee, conducting research and recommendations to Council, as well as looking at city policies, programs, or services which can be connected to the committee mandate, and any advice or enhancements to the mandate would be recommended through that Council. So on that note, I'm going to turn over to the Vice Chair, and she can go through the annual work plan and take any questions that Council may have. So thank you.
So as Mr. Suter mentioned, we have based the creation of the work plan on the mandate, and we've met 5 times so far. We meet again tomorrow night, so that'll be meeting 6. We've had really good team building and getting to know each other, and all the members of this committee are really committed to doing their homework. They've spent a lot of time reviewing the materials provided by legal and legislative services. They've become really familiar with a lot of the good work that Council has done, so that we're working in sort of in conjunction with the work that you have. Highlights for us was certainly developing our skills and competencies in doing the arts grant review and learning and fully understanding how best to allocate those funds. So we did a lot of work preparing for our first go at that. And I think I was here about 4 meetings ago, giving you our report from that funding. Our next things that we're tackling is, again, looking at the public art and public art policies, which is something you'd asked us to do. And so we're looking at both sort of what other places are doing in terms of public art and also speaking with stakeholders. And we have really good representation on this committee from various visual artists and supporters of visual arts, which is, we're very blessed to have that. I think that's basically it. If you're wondering where President Stout, Martin Stout is our president, he is deep in rehearsals for a play that he is in. So I'll give him a shameless plug. He's in Canterbury Tales on Telford with the Leduc Amateur Dramatic Society, and it opens on June 27th. And he either owes me something or he will present next.
Appreciate that. Does that conclude your presentation? Thank you very much. Any questions from members of council for our presenters on the report they provided to us? Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions. As a representative that sits there, I'm well aware of the hard work that the volunteers are doing. And I just wanted to let council know that I'm quite impressed, as Sarah said, with the amount of effort and the homework. One of the things I don't often see on committees is the amount of homework that people are doing and reading large documents that Mr. Suter's been very, very kind to share many documents with the committee, but it has been very refreshing to see the amount of effort and time that's gone into this committee. So I just wanted council to be aware of that and thank them for all that they're doing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you. I echo Councillor Barnhart. I appreciate that there was a lot of work that had to go into setting this up, and especially including the annual work plan, but it appears as though there's a good base framework to work off of. So that's great to hear. Just one note, I hear a variety of ideas from various people in the community about the need for art spaces.
Yeah.
And options to potentially use spaces we currently have. We haven't really seen anything concrete that we've been able to kind of move forward on with that. Is that something you guys will be discussing in the future, or has that come up to the committee yet?
There's been some informal conversations, but nothing specific to the Arts Advisory Council. Because we are stood up at your behest, if you would like us to spend some time investigating some of those kind of options, we'd be happy to do that. We have all spent time with the steering committee's report from a couple of years back, as well as we have all made ourselves familiar with, I think it's 2 different reports from Mr. Schick, and then myself and Martin Stout have also we were sort of in at the ground floor, and I personally watched most of his presentations to your group. So yeah, if that's something you would like us to focus on, like that's why we're sharing our work plan. If this looks like the right direction, we did decide to go after trying to get that public art space policy in place and get started on building relationships with stakeholders in the community. But we're happy to focus our efforts where you would like us to. We are your committee.
Do you want to add anything?
If I can just add through the mayor to Councillor McCook, they have discussed gap analysis in what is currently the need out there, both for groups that are organized and are functioning now, as far as trying to determine what kind of spaces they need to deliver their programs and how we could potentially collaborate and make use of existing spaces. That work has just started. So we have to identify who those folks are exactly and what questions we're going to seek from them. But the committee has definitely discussed that. And I think that's on the agenda for tomorrow night as well. So just a little clarity around that thing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the work that the committee does.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilor Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the presentation, all the work that you've done and the team have done there. I think, you know, what I heard from that, and you kind of made a bit of a half joke about it, is like you kind of remember how many reports that we've got about this, right? And so the last thing we want to need to do is have more reports. We know what we need, right? And so I think when I look at the work plan here, you've got October 9th to make recommendations for future current art spaces, getting ahead of budget, right? So clearly that's worked with you around timing. You know, the ask that is in front of us that we've seen multiple times, right? It's not going to be a one item on a budget, right? What we need to do is have that broader discussion, right? And we've started to have that the discussion around our spaces and what we need, large capital items. We're looking at the whole thing. And obviously the arts facility comes within that. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, your comment about can't remember which study, and I get it. Like the last thing you'll hear from, or hopefully the last thing you'll hear from this council is let's do another study to tell us what we already know. What we do need though is to have that broader holistic view, and it's really good to hear that you know that the feedback that's coming up through your committee is reinforcing that focus, right? We've heard it, we've all heard it in the community. A lot of us heard it during different campaigns throughout the time about the need for it. It's now how do we have that conversation from a broader budget perspective? Because it's going to be hard to do it as a standalone. So what do we do with that all? And I know we've been asking administration about not just this site, but about the overall engagement plan. And we got some updates around what that looks like. But we're really, certainly we've been asking to make sure that we have this discussion at budget time around what that looks like to set up kind of the engagement process. I link it to you know, when we did the Aquafit Phase 2 project, right? That and updating that into our new rec center, that takes a lot of time. But until you start getting some schematics out there and getting real people engaged is when you get the momentum. So that's what we're trying to lean in. You know, all the other asks that we have as a municipality, but I'm glad you keep pushing forward and making sure this is top of the list. So just wanted to acknowledge that and make sure that that October 9th, when that comes back, really looking forward to how we're thinking about that, or how the committee's thinking about that to help us provide that advice to us. That's what you're here for, and we're here to listen to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebus, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And again, thank you for putting this together. Obviously, it's very difficult to get stuff done without a plan. And it seems like, as Councillor McCook had mentioned, there's some framework in place to help us get to some sort of a resolution. One of the things I note here on May 8th, it says identify stakeholders and their needs, develop that list, and then goes on to say who are the stakeholders that are looking for a facility to support this recommendation. So I'm just curious if you have a little more insight as to a broad spectrum, kind of who those stakeholders, immediate stakeholders are, and what some of those basic needs are through that conversation and brainstorming.
Yeah. I was away for the May 8th meeting, so I'm going to defer to Mr. Suter to try and remember what the overall discussion was. I know we have some follow-up to do tomorrow night based on recommendations from May 8th, but perhaps Councilman Barnhart, were you in attendance? I was in Disneyland. I'm sorry.
Through the mayor to Councilor Telebus. We just started that conversation last meeting, basically, as far as the framework around who we would engage directly. We're not trying to reinvent any of the work that's been done. It's more of an affirmation that we're going down the right path, I think. And what those, it was more like looking at what can we do in the interim and what can we do long-term? If there is a solution that could satisfy some needs of these groups to support them and further their growth today, what is that? What does that look like with an existing space? So that's kind of the narrative around the conversation. And then tomorrow evening at the next meeting, there'll be more conversation on that, I'm told. So.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, I guess just speaking to that, as it mentions there, to support the recommendation of council. So perhaps after the next meeting, just seeing who some of those key stakeholders are so that we can make sure. Yeah.
We will include sort of all of that when we bring the report back to you in October on sort of, and this committee is really creative in thinking about different ways of approaching short-term and long-term solutions for the groups that need performing space, and also our visual arts community that needs both gallery space and workspace, communal workspace.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, I do appreciate the work of the committee as well, to pass on our regards to the committee, and I do appreciate their work. Having that, I'll look for member of council to make a motion to accept the reports and information. Councillor Barnhart.
Be pleased to move that, Mayor, that this report be approved for information, accepted for information.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on the motion to accept the report as information? That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. Again, thank you to our presenters for your presentation this evening. Next on our agenda is Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee Annual Report. Mr. Suter, you're staying where you are. Mr. Mills, you're joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening. Gentlemen, the microphone is on. Please begin when you're ready. And we lost half our audience, 3/4 of our audience. See you guys.
Maybe I should have got up.
All right, guys, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Paul Suter, Director of Community Services. I'm pleased to be joined by the Chair of the Rec and Culture Advisory Committee meeting, Jeff Mills. And as per the bylaw 1038-23, the committee is required to provide an annual update to Council. Terms not unlike the Arts Advisory as far as advising Council on policy, facilities, programming related to recreation, sports, leisure, heritage, community events, and volunteerism. It's quite a broad mandate, if you will. However, they sort of overlap each other in many ways, so it sort of fits when you talk about it as holistically. Identify and engage stakeholders, groups, and seek their input on the work of the committee, conducting research, preparing reports, advice to Council on policies, programs, services, and any changes or enhancement to the mandate is also discussed if need be. And at that point, I'll turn over to Jeff, and he can talk about the annual work plan and some of the topics. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Suter. Pleased to be here on behalf of the committee tonight. Just as a reminder, a couple of the council motions that kind of frame our work with the committee, revolve around the working with the Youth Advisory Committee on, providing some recommendations for additional youth programming, providing some insight into and some recommendations for programs that set out in the city activities guide and improving the online registration process, and kind of an online or ongoing, I guess, joke within our committee a little bit around pickleballs and pickleball courts, the popularity of that and the sighting of that. So it gets a good chuckle there. So thus far, we've met 5 times. We have currently 8 members on the committee. As you can imagine, recreation and culture, that mandate or that umbrella is cast kind of a wide shadow. But I do feel that our committee has a great range of interests and people on the committee. So we've had really active and engaged discussions over our first, I guess it'd be 5 meetings now. The first couple meetings we had were, try to understand the kind of the new bylaws and the mandates of the committee as we reformed in February there. Quick turnaround in March to our next meeting, trying to develop the annual work plan and the goals of the committee. Since then, I think we've had a couple of really great presentations, specifically from the City of Beaumont events team, the Youth Advisory Committee, the off-leash dog park people, again, discussing community event strategy, reviewing the cricket and batting cage sighting options. Also had a great presentation here recently this past week with the supervisor for the youth center, Brody Stenhouse, meeting with the Lions Club in regards to some mini sticks sighting and facility, and then a really great presentation from the Place to Grow representatives. So really rigorous discussions on those action items thus far. Making some recommendations in regards to a community event strategy, providing support for the off-leash dog group people I think it was a cleanup activity that they were going to have at the off-leash dog park there. Preparing for this annual report to council, discussing how we can empower youth in the city, either through volunteerism or employment, events, those sorts of things. It's kind of come as a major topic of discussion within our committee, what we can do with the youth and how we can empower the youth in this city now. So I think we are on a little bit of a summer break here, but I think a big focus of our discussions in September will be, working with the Youth Advisory Committee to, brainstorm on ideas, events, those sorts of things that we can find some ways to empower the youth within the city here as well. Also discussed some siting options for some mini sticks, the pickleball courts, the cricket cages, those sorts of things. And this week, kind of in between meetings, also discussing some options for some holiday lighting in the center Parkville there. So we have quite a few active, topics of discussion on our committee right now in just the first 5 meetings that we've had. So I would imagine after we pick up after the summer break again, we're going to have continuous, rigorous discussions on these and many other topics. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Now up members of council, any questions they may have of the report. Councillor Telebas, followed by Councillor McCook. You have the floor.
Perfect. Again, I'll just share with you my appreciation for the work that any committee does. Obviously, there's a lot to tackle here, tying in especially the youth and the culture and everything. So appreciate everything so far. Just a quick question. What is pickleball? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I know what it is. But I am hoping to just get a little feedback on you or from you in regards to the Leduc pickleball setup that has been recently installed. I'm just wondering if you guys have had any feedback as to if that's something that the group is kind of looking for. Like, is that the development that would make citizens happy within Beaumont based on the feedback you've received, or are we looking for something completely different?
I will have to admit the May meeting in which the pickleball was discussed, I was absent from that meeting there, so maybe I'll defer to Mr. Suter on this one. We're kind of striking out in regards to questions here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the mayor to Council and Telebas, we have that direction from council to come back regarding pickleball siting options to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have not directly engaged them yet. That's just been a topic of conversation. I did respond to a councilor inquiry some time ago with some details around that Leduc court that they recently opened. So that's just more of the costs and the sizing and how they went about their approach to get that. But this committee will definitely be talking about that as part of, not only how big to build it, but where could you possibly do it, which would be done in time to respond to the motion and then hopefully enter into the budget in some capacity if that's the direction. So I don't have an answer other than that at the moment. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, no, I do appreciate the reports we received. I was just looking for clarity and if that is the type of facility that we kind of have a consensus on. But yeah, outside of that, I do believe that's it for myself. So I appreciate it.
It is tabled for discussion on our next meeting on September 3rd as well. So I'm sure it'll be front and center in that discussion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you. I reiterate Councillor Telebas's appreciation for your work. I look forward to hearing more about the community event strategy that you guys are working on. Just a question of clarity. Can you explain the process, or do you have some clarity around the process of when a group presents to the committee, and then what happens after that? Do we give them any follow-up after they've presented to the committee as to kind of next steps, or whether the committee's moving on anything, or kind of what does that process look like?
Typically with the presentations, obviously the speaker will come in and present either slides or verbally or however in that regard. And then they're usually spent a little bit of time on like a question and answer, or provide the speaker with feedback. Usually the main question that we would ask of that speaker is, what is it of this committee that you were essentially looking for us to do? Usually there's some sort of response for that. And then usually I would say at the end of the meeting, after that speaker is left, we will discuss that topic amongst the committee and then either enter it into the work plan, for future discussion, or at that point in time, make a motion to Mr. Suter through the committee for some sort of recommendation based on what we have heard that evening.
Okay. Thank you. And then after that, is there any follow-up with the presenter as to whether there is a motion coming or not, or anything like that?
Councilor, great question. What you'll see with the way it's set up now is we're way more structured than we had been in the past. And it's not that the good work wasn't being done, but this really sets the stage for a process, to your question. So yes, we do follow up, especially if we're in support. And they kind of get a good read of the committee at the time, I would say. But we do, the Scoop the Poop event was a classic example where they made that, and then we followed up the next week, giving them some instructions on how to proceed with the, we'll go to council for the letter of support, and then they would do the special permission process. So yes, there's follow-up with them. And as Jeff says, we make the vote, someone would make a motion and the committee would vote, and then we would take that direction from there to see how to best deliver it. But in the past, this structure is really helping administration as well with just how to get something moved forward through the process.
I would definitely say too, amongst the committee, it is kind of a learning process right now, only being 4 or 5 like real meetings into this. So we are still, I guess, at the learning phase for, how it is that we take the information that we receive and move it forward. So I'm looking forward to, and the committee is looking forward to moving forward in September, now that we have, I think, our feet underneath us and know the process and what it is that the mayor and council are looking for from us. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think that's always, just getting that process is key. And then, it really demonstrates the purpose of this committee, right? Is to have those people come forward and then for you guys to make those recommendations to council. And I think it's important too that we do that follow up with them as well, so they know, what's happening with that presentation after I brought it to the committee. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I do agree that the work plan, the format that we have here now, I think keeps the members more engaged and, gives them a better idea of what the priorities are that we're going to be speaking to. Because we obviously are only meeting 2 hours every month. So we want to make that time as beneficial as possible.
Yeah. And there's only so much things you can work on as well, right? Yeah. So you can't take everything on. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCoy-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Councillor, you have the floor.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I just noticed that when I looked at the plan, right, you've got October and November kind of to be confirmed. I just want to double check here that in the arts discussion we had 3 minutes ago, there was a presentation to council. So I assume that's part of the plan, but I just want to make sure that before we go into budget and we start getting some weird, crazy ideas, that we actually use the feedback from you guys. And so there'll be an opportunity prior to budget where you'll come in and say, this is what we've heard from the community, the different presentations, and our recommendation as your advisory committee of these few things in this upcoming budget. Is that the rough plan?
Great question. It's a hybrid, I would suggest. That's one option. The other option is if it's already an existing, if it's a capital item, for example, if it's already in the plan, administration would add that the committee has reviewed it and has made a recommendation to support it. In some cases, that's the case. If it's something that's not been addressed before, then ideally we would like to get the committees back twice a year just to wrap up for the year and prior to budget, to your point. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's really helpful. I think as we think about budget, and I don't know that's way too far away for Curtis, but as we think about budget, we develop what that looks like. I think it'd be really helpful when we look at any of those projects that are in that capital budget, if there's lines in there that reviewed or recommended by the Arts Advisory, just to help us with that link would be really helpful, so that we not having to ask the question, well, what did the advisory council think about that, right? So just think about that. But yeah, the structure here is exactly what we're looking for. It just speaks to the maturation of the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Jeff, for presenting. Just want to echo the sentiment as council member on the board about the diverse interests on the group. I've really appreciated the members bringing different angles consistently challenging each other to think about those different angles kind of in a group and as a group. So that's been really refreshing. The group has been given homework and they have produced on that homework that is done regarding the teen idea that was put forward. So that's really good. And I'd like to think that groups coming and presenting to the committee catches on in the community. It feels like that anyways, because with the more formalized process that was discussed earlier around committees coming and having groups coming to the committee and having conversations, and then knowing that the committee is having a tangible discussion and figuring out what to do, if anything, with that ask, I think is more encouraging for groups. So I think that is an important piece, and that was teased out tonight in the questions as well. So thanks, Jeff, for your work and chairing the committee. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much. Appreciate all of the work that you're doing. One of my questions is following along the same line as Councillor Monkoff-Swain around coming back to council and actually making the recommendations that then can actually be put into action. And I just wondered if on April 2nd in the work plan where it talks about we'll be recommending the development of the strategy, what's the process there? Are you doing more work on that, or is that basically you're saying to council now, we want you to develop that strategy and the administration is going forward to do it? What's the interim here and what's the process?
Great question, Councillor Barnhart. My thought around that is that's something we've identified in the past, and it would be something that administration would recommend anyway as something we'd like to have done. Is following in line with the rec master plan about having that strategy in place for the city. The committee did a look at that. We had quite a conversation around that, and then they made a motion to recommend that for council for funding in 25. So as part of the budget process, we would bring that as a one-pager anyway, and have that's documented that the committee had looked at it. Conversely, when the committee comes back, it would be part of whatever other recommendations are in there. So council will see this again for sure.
So Mr. Suter, just following up on that, would the committee have input to that, or is it basically the administration is taking it away and developing it and bringing it back to council? Is there an involvement there?
The committee has had input by reviewing what that scope could be or would be, and had made the motion and voted to support recommending that. So they're just validating, I think, what administration was hoping to achieve, and also what the strategic our places in play had identified years ago. So it's just further validation that that's something that is a need for us.
And if I could, Mayor, just one follow-up.
Sure.
May 7th, the administration will ask council for a letter of support. Did we already get asked that question, or is that yet to come? For the dog off leash?
Yeah, both. There was 2 letters of support that went through, I think, the last council meeting.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's done. Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. So for the questions, I'll echo all the council comments on the positive side of this committee. I sat on this committee a couple of years ago with Steve, actually, and one of the most active committees has gotten more active as time goes on. And I think people are very much aware that it's a very active committee. People can actually come and express their ideas. So it's working very well and functioning very well. So thank you for your work. Seeing no further questions from anybody, I'll ask for a motion to accept the report as information from a member of the council. Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the June 11th, 2024 report, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee annual report be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion, members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion to accept for information? And that carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, gentlemen, for the report. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is item 6.3, small basketball court project update. Mr. Chartrand, I believe you're joining us this evening. Microphone's on. When you're ready, sir, you can begin your presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here to bring forward a report for the design, siting, and construction estimate for the small basketball court projects in various park sites in the city of Beaumont. This report is following up on a motion from council for administration to provide a report on the proposed cost, design, and location prior to construction. We have provided council with a conceptual design, siting, and a Class B cost estimate for this project. The estimate provided comes from a conceptual design provided and is using current costs aligned with other similar projects done within the capital region. The location for the courts listed in the report came from engagement with the Beaumont Youth Basketball Association and in alignment with criteria including distance from walking trails, proximity to nearby residents, and other basketball facilities along with nearby available parking. The report provides council with 3 options. Options A, Given the approved budget of $90,000, the current design spend of less than $5,000, and the Class B estimates to construct each court, only 2 courts could be constructed with the approved funds available. Option B, if council wishes to approve additional funding to complete all 3 courts, a motion would be required during the upcoming capital budget adjustment or delay for consideration at 2025 budget deliberations. And option C, council received this report as information and construction would not proceed. Unused project funds would remain in the funding pool. Administration recommends proceeding with option A and the construction of 2 courts in 2024 at both Nature Park and Colonial Park, following the prioritization listed in the report. I am now ready for any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chartrand. Appreciate that. I'm very excited about this report, but I'll go to council first for any questions. And I'll go to Councilman Newkirk to make a motion, as Councilman Newkirk brought this idea forward earlier this year. And I'll go to Councilman Newkirk for any first question, and other members of council. And I'll go to Steve to make a motion on the report. So any members of council, Steve, you want to have any questions for our presenter, or any other members of council for questions before I go to the motion? Councilman Newkirk. Yep, your mic's on.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to echo some appreciation for reaching out and engaging with the youth basketball group and, citing a couple locations. I was pleased to see that the locations weren't Four Seasons Park. Four Seasons Park gets a lot of love, and it's, should the support be there for these, this would put a couple important facilities in different spots in the community. So just an appreciation for that engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor McCook. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. Just one question around timing. Yes, I think I'm trying to find the exact reference to it, but it was mentioned that tendering process hasn't begun yet, and yet there's still time to get this done this year. And I think it said several months to tender. I'm just wondering, is there enough time this season to actually do that? Have you really figured that out in terms of the timing? Because I wouldn't want us to say, yes, we're going to have it, and then it turns out to be delayed.
Mr. Mayor, through you. So we do have some leeway within that several months. We could have a quicker tender out. We just wanted to give ourselves some shoulder time. In that said, it's not a long construction process to actually have these installed. So we are comfortable that should we, council wish to proceed after tonight, we could get tenders out fairly quick and have construction completed before the end of the construction season.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, followed by Councillor Penrod.
Thank you. I too appreciate that you guys consulted the Beaumont Basketball Association, and they were able to give their input. I think it really kind of highlights the importance of consulting these groups and the fact that the city takes those consultations seriously. So I appreciate that. During the consultation with them, did they have any other feedback other than the locations? Were they receptive to these kinds of courts? Were they excited about them?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take credit for the reaching out, but it wasn't me. It was actually Paul Suter was met with the group, so he'd have more information for it.
Mr. Suter, welcome back.
Sorry. Might as well just stay here. Sorry, the question was around, did they have any other?
Yeah, any other comments other than the locations? Were they receptive to these kinds of courts? Did they see a need for them?
Yeah, I spoke with the president, and he was very appreciative of the fact that we did reach out to them. He was very supportive of this. He also threw in some wish list ideas for something bigger and more grandiose where people could come inside and watch. So I think what came through loud and clear through that engagement conversation was there's a need for more space, but I'm sure that I'm not telling council something they haven't heard themselves and never had informed. So as far as the siting locations, yes, what's been in the report here from Corey is what was basically verbatim from that group as far as how they would go about it, which kind of aligned, I think, with what administration was thinking as far as suitable locations or something like this. So.
Perfect, thank you. And I just wanted to thank Councillor Van Newkirk for bringing this forward. I think we've definitely heard on multiple occasions that there's a need for things for youth to do in our community. And I think some of these more informal rec opportunities are definitely one of them, and to have them spaced throughout the city so they're easily walkable too and stuff is very important as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Thank you for the report. And again, kudos for some good engagement. I'd love to be responding to those requests coming from the community. Two quick questions. One, I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit more of a sense as to the proposed siting, in particular in Parc Nature. That's obviously a pretty sprawling park, including a little bit ecologically sensitive areas. And so just wondering how you're proposing to manage the setback from the houses on the one hand, without too much disrupting the sort of feel of that particular park.
Mr. Mayor, through you, so the proposed location more directly inside Nature Park is what I consider directly east of the outdoor hockey arena. So it fits within that site, giving us distance from existing residents. Also, there's already a sport location there with noise. Plus, it keeps us away from that wetland area, as you're mentioning. Gives us proper distance away from that to ensure that we don't encroach onto that natural preserve area.
So the idea is to kind of consolidate another seasonal activity in the same general space where the rink is already located, if I'm understanding you correctly?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through you, yeah, that's exactly right.
Thank you. So for my second question, I zeroed in on your report. I'm looking at page 17 on the PDF here. The basketball hoop materials are designed for public use and will withstand heavy traffic and some degree of abuse. Appreciate hearing that. I do know, I have heard that the nets in many of our basketball courts around the city are not holding up. And I think I understand that we've actually removed the nets for most of our basketball hoops as a result. And that I understand there's been some research into other products that might hold up better. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to pass on the feedback from basketball community that I'm hearing is that nets are appreciated. Without them, it does affect some of the playability of the resources. So just wondered if you maybe have an update on that ongoing work, or if you want to say anything more on that.
Mr. Mayor, through you, not specifically, but I guess what I could say is whenever we reached out to our designers, it was about the latest and greatest designs as it came to basketball hoops. Now, the netting in particular, the different types of materials, I can't speak to, but it is what is currently best used or best practiced within the industry.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebas, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you. Just a quick question, again, relates to design here. I see in the proposal there that you reference asphalt. I'm just wondering if we've considered more eco-friendly as well as potentially cheaper alternatives and longer lasting. So things like the rubber pavement, which is also a lot easier on the body and the knees and the joints. So just wondering if that's something we considered from a cost perspective, but also in terms of longevity.
Mr. Mayor, through you, as with the netting, that we were asking our designers to go with best practice and what they've designed and built in other areas. Asphalt, though, does carry a lower operational and remediation cost through the life cycle of the basketball court, hence why we moved in that direction. But yeah, sorry, that's exactly why we came up with it in our design.
Thank you, Councillor. You're good?
I think so.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, I have no questions myself about the actual report. Again, I'm thrilled this is actually coming back to us operationally to be done this year. So with that, I'll go to Councilman Van Nieuwkerk to make a motion on this report, and we'll debate that motion and move forward. Councilman Van Nieuwkerk, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. At this point, I'd like to move the recommendation that the remaining 2024 capital budget funding in the amount of $90,000 for the 2 basketball court design project be allocated for the completion and construction of 2 basketball courts, single hoop and 3-point court at Nature Park and Colonial Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Wish to speak to your motion. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. when I'm out and about, I'm always looking for new ideas and new things, and council sees that because I'm often texting you guys the ideas and things that I see as I move around. And one of the opportunities that I saw was these type of a structure, because they exist already on the end of many driveways in Beaumont, the single hoop with, you know, the kind of the 3-point chalk lines that the children are making out on there. And when I observe the full court basketball court that we have down by the reservoir, very beautiful court. But what is happening on that court is often 3-point games anyways. So, which is kind of what led me to the, you know, the example that I brought forward and was supported and got us to here. So, you know, I look forward to, hopefully there's enough support for this tonight, and I would really look forward to shoot some hoops with you all on one of these structures in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other members of council wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Telebas, you have the floor.
Thank you. I guess just for clarity, maybe not so much for this group, but for everyone else that is watching, just reminding everyone that this amount in this budget had been allocated in our budget when we had discussed it. So this new cost isn't anything additional and above what we've already determined was appropriate for this project, hence why the options are proposed. So although I'm not good at basketball, I will support you on this one. So.
For the discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll one quick comment myself. I do appreciate the reasoning here. I'm also very happy administration brought this back to us early with an option to implement this year instead of waiting until budget time and having it done next year instead. This is very proactive on the administration's part to let us know we have options to do something sooner than expected and within budget too. It's a win-win. So I appreciate that. I'm prepared to support the motion. Seeing no further question, many members of council on the motion. Council, would you please vote on the motion on the screen? That carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, council. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. And moving on our agenda is 6.4, Economic Development Investment Attraction Marketing Update. Ms. Nising, Ms. Morrison, I believe you're joining us. Microphone's on, so when you're ready, please begin. Introduce yourselves first. Yeah, you know the routine. Thanks.
Jen Niesing from Economic Development and Charlene Morrison from Communications.
Thank you.
We're here tonight to give you closer. Sorry, I always do that. I'll scooch. We're here this evening to give you a brief update of the next steps in how we're promoting Beaumont. So we have a little bit of a memo that goes along with this. I'm really just hoping to highlight some of the key things that we're going after. So in early the year, we came with our commercial market analysis. And in the commercial market analysis, we did a lot of conversation around where should we be going? What are we looking at? What would our residents like to see? And that's what's really informed this next step of our process. So just looking quickly, it of course aligns to council's strategic vision, and that's building our tomorrow today. What I'd really like to talk about today is where we have found that we're best to target. So in the short term, given the land availability in Beaumont, our key targeting for our marketing will be for commercial. It will be for that infill, that vacancy we've talked about, the goods and services, the restaurants, healthcare. Of course, we've heard a lot about healthcare over the last while. In the short term, we will also continue to build up that Beaumont brand. Much of council has seen some of the work that's gone out already. Charlene's going to talk to us about that in a minute, but we're starting to get our name out there in a professional, founded way that we can back up with real data, which is really important to us as we go forward with those conversations. As this builds out, and I say in the long term, but this will happen naturally now as well, but it'll become more of a target in the next couple of years. And that's where we'll be aiming for more of that global and foreign direct investment relating to the regional target sectors, which for us will most likely include AI and technology, food and agriculture, which is a very big one for us, global logistics and transportation, and health and life sciences. From the community market analysis, what we really found was what our community would like to see is more grocery and specialty food, clothing and household, and additional dining options. So those are, of course, things that we're going to be working with the local developers that are building out commercial and working to fill our infill with, is to meet those community wants and needs. What we're really going to be selling now is Beaumont's value proposition. We now have a very real picture of what that is. And what that is that we have a higher income community with a vast spending portfolio. We are growing very quickly. That's one of the most attractive things I hear when we're talking to developers is you build now, the community just keeps getting larger and larger. The high-speed fiber optic is always something good. Our proximity is hugely helpful. So the one thing that Mr. Tuttle had presented to us was that trade area. The trade area is very attractive to developers looking to come. We are close to South Edmonton. We are 10 minutes from the airport. We are right in people's way to and from, and that's something that can drive more traffic. So as we have South Edmonton build out, which I understand will be in its own time, we will have people that will start making that choice to come south instead of north as we have more available. We do have quite a bit of commercial expansion underway right now, as you see to the north and to the south of the city. There's quite a bit coming up, and what that gives us is the opportunity to fill that with the right type of businesses that meet those community needs. And a lot of our advertising is targeted at getting that message out. And I will pass it over.
Thanks, Jen. So let's just run through some tools and tactics that we're currently underway. First of all, you may have noticed that we are doing weekly LinkedIn posts. These are for two reasons. One, we want to build a network of contacts for commercial investment and opportunities. And the second is to attract people with the trade area that is unique to our shopping and local lifestyle experiences. So those are available and based on the information and data provided. The second piece that we're doing is weekly, the radio ads through, since the beginning of May through 1FM, we've been highlighting Beaumont's businesses, lifestyle, and local shopping. And the city has 3 30-minute radio spots throughout the day. 30 seconds. I always say 30 minutes. It just sounds so much better, but no, it's second. Yeah, sorry. And that's through, they have a focus on Discover Beaumont campaign, and we're just part of that with a number of other local businesses. The station's listenership covers much of our trade area, and these cost-effective ads are a great way to keep Beaumont top of mind for our target audiences. So the third thing that we're currently working on are the sector attraction packages. And these are tailored for 3 specific areas for commercial, light industrial, and greenfield development. These packages will be used to promote Beaumont at trade conferences and other events attended by economic development. In addition, with the upcoming launch of the new website, we will be revising the business attraction and investment section. So here we'll be looking to optimize the new features and integrations like the Government of Alberta's Business Site Selector tool. This tool is a self-serve digital platform that helps businesses and investors find suitable properties to expand and set up their businesses in communities across the province. To support all these activities, we're also updating our photo library and aerial imagery because everything is about an image these days. So it just makes sense that we have to keep pace with as much growth that we've had to represent our community. So an up-to-date image bank will help us develop authentic and trusted marketing products. Oh, we're already there. Fantastic. So how will we know what worked? Of course, comparative stats over the year. And we'll be monitoring business inquiries annually, tracking QR codes, measuring the reach and impressions on LinkedIn and other social media platforms, analyzing web stats, and of course, gathering positive stories and anecdotal comments from word of mouth. Those stories will be like gold when we want to do future marketing initiatives. So back to you.
So the next is the part where we ask you for your help. A lot of you are doing this already, and we thank you. So if you can continue to like and repost the LinkedIn post, send it to people. As we get the fact sheets and the brochures, we'll make that available to all of council. We'll also reach out to people we've met at conferences like ICSC and get it out to them as well. And then also, as you hear about stuff, please send it our way. A lot of business people, a lot of people while they're out there, they tend to go to mayor and council. And we just ask that as you get those things, as you have been doing, please continue to send them our way. So it's a little bit of an overview of what we're working on and where we can use always the assistance, and we're open to any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate that. With that, open to council members for questions. Councilor Telebus, you have the floor first.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I think we all understand the criticality of making sure we develop our commercial sector. In saying that, we've seen a drop year over year for the past 4 years, I believe, 3 for sure, in terms of ratio versus residential population compared to commercial. So it's something that we need to focus on, and I really appreciate your efforts because it's a difference maker in many ways. One is tax relief to the average household, because obviously that transfer to that commercial side of taxes. In addition to that, it brings additional businesses and resources, things like clothing, stuff like that, so we can actually stay and purchase within our community. The one concern I have, and I'm just going to run through a couple of scenarios here, is I'll run through, I guess, about 3-4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, we hosted the U19 girls ringette tournament, and we had everyone come from Leduc and area and further out, much further out, Calgary, as well as I believe there was a Grand Prairie. But in saying that, there was nowhere to stay. And we run into that scenario time in, time out. Beaumont Soccer is hosting the Summer Splash this weekend, which is another tournament. We see Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray, all these other groups come in here, and we have to direct them to Edmonton or Nisku. So in terms of short term on the commercial side, I don't see anything for hotel and accommodation. Is there a reason why that's not captured within the commercial?
There is. A large part of that is the way that hotels select their sites. So there is a large number of hotels within about 15 minutes of Beaumont whose vacancy rates are not fantastic. So if you work with major hotel brands, small hotel brands, just about everybody, and we have, what they do is they contact those hotels, they get those numbers, and there's just not a very strong business case. We've gone through some looking at alternatives, some doing some partners. We've had people who have looked at it and kind of wavered. But it's not an incredibly strong case for Beaumont yet. Not saying it never will be, but it's not one of our primary focuses because as we've tried, we've found that that's not a realistic goal for our next 2 years or so. We will always keep it in the background. We will always pursue every opportunity we have for it. It's just not a very strong case at the moment.
Okay, perfect. Then I guess, would that be something we'd be able to add to the long term, 3 to 10 years, just so at least it's captured and it's on our radar?
We certainly could do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, Councillor Markov-Swain, followed by Councillor Newkirk. Councillor Markov-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, the update. I'll trust my councillor Phil here to let me know what happens on the radio. So you just give me a nod over there. Sorry, I had to get that shot over. So I see the what, right? I agree with the what, but I can't quite see the how, and maybe this isn't the time to bring it up, but so what do we want? We want to, in these 3 years, these are the 3 things that we want to attract, right? And the how, we've talked to you about incentives and these sort of things before. So just maybe help me, not today, but when does that discussion come back to council around how we're thinking about incentivizing business? Aside from data, most important thing is data, right? Get that information which you've got. You're going to talk about that tonight. Sorry.
Yeah.
In the closed session.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
You're good?
I'm good.
Let me help you. You're good. Sorry. Councillor Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnard. Councillor, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you to Councillor Natellenboss for breaking the ice on the hotel piece. So the one thing that really want to just bring forward is the opportunities that we have for ancillary services in general. And, you know, the hotel being one of them around, you know, groups that are coming to Beaumont, but there are other ancillary services that residents in Beaumont often come to council and say, it'd be nice if we had this, be nice if we had that. And you included the, you know, the list on the early in the presentation, you know, community commercial demands, grocery and specialty foods, clothing and household, the additional dining options. Great wording to encompass everything I hear. But maybe could you just speak to how you get that feedback? I know that council feeds it to you because I'm part of that, but how does the community know that the things and ideas that are percolating in the community make it onto economic development's radar? What does that look like?
Well, we have a number of them who like to call us, so they know it's there for sure. A lot of this information though was from the surveys that we had completed late last year, early this year.
Yep.
So we've put that out there. Beyond that, I think they only really know it comes to us if they've spoken to us. Presentations like this are part of our way of getting that back out.
Yeah.
The marketing will let people see this is what we're targeting. But beyond that, that's probably the best ways we can let people know that we've heard them and we're working towards it.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, there are events, there are conferences, there are seminars, there are lunch and learns that council, we attend alongside yourself and staff, right? And there are regional conversations that happen. We just hosted one with Build Edmonton, which is the collection of CBHA and UDI.
Yes.
Is rebranded as Build. I'm not going to take a stab at that acronym, but in the room in Beaumont at Colonial and on a hockey game night, we had a great discussion with that group around all of the home building things, all the commercial needs, some of the perceptions in the community, and we were really able to you know, kind of take the, you know, just take the tie off and just drop it on the ground and say, here's what we're hearing from the community, right? So anything that your team can do to create more opportunities for those types of feedback mechanisms to builders, investors, developers in the community where it could be helpful to hear from council, I would invite more of that because I found that really helpful. So
we can take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart. You have the floor.
Two questions. Well, one is a question and one is a story. But the question first, a lot of your initiatives, there's a lot of initiatives, and you're working on attracting new business, new commercial, which is, of course, one of your main reasons for existing. Is it also in your goals, mission, to look after helping existing businesses to thrive? And if it is, which I'm pretty sure there's something there about that, can you point to some of the implementations that maybe the strategies that you're using now or that you're considering using to do that? Because one thing is attracting new, the other is if we see existing leave, and I wouldn't want to see that happen. So could you speak to that, please?
I agree. We spend a large amount of time with our local business owners. We work with them as they need new space, as they are looking to grow. We send them opportunities to grow. We've had a few instances where things were shaky and we did what we could to work through them. With the marketing, the radio ads in particular, that's actually joint with local businesses. So there's a lot of local businesses who have bought ad space, and then we have ad space that's promoting local business in general in Beaumont and the style in Beaumont. So a lot of those things we do in support of local businesses. We work with the local chambers. There's been trade fairs. There's been things like that that we do to help them. We help them with their celebrations and getting their marketing out there as well. And that's sort of a bit of it. In Q3, I believe we have a full local business engagement plan that'll be coming back to council. But those are some of the things you see us undertaking right now as we continue to work with them.
It's very important, and I'm very involved at myself, home-based businesses, women in business. So I do want to see that continue if possible. The story or the comment is that coming back from the recent Federation of Canadian Municipalities, one of the things that Councillor McCook and I ran into was a new database, a new software put out by Canada Tourism. And the young lady that was presenting wanted to show us, you know, demonstrate. And so she pointed to Beaumont and she brought it up on the screen. And she, you know, she said, wow, you know, you have all of this going for you. You've got the income, the young, the population, the location. Like, she was blown away by it. And then we said, yeah, you know what? We don't know why we can't get a hotel here. And she said, yeah, I don't know either, because you've got all of the indicators. So again, that's what we're hearing and feeling. So granted, you're the experts and you do know that business cases are important for some of the bigger hotels, but still think there's room for smaller, maybe boutique hotels, and just add my voice to that, because we really could use some more hotel space in this area.
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further, Councillor McCook, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, it was a very cool website. I will share as well, because they have a lot of data around tourism and everything, and especially probably tourism of just the Edmonton metro region in general would probably be beneficial. Since you've started the campaign, I know it hasn't been that long, but have you had any traction? Have you had much feedback? Have you?
Oh, sorry, how'd your mic get off? Hang on. There it is, on now.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor McCook. We've had traction, definitely. From the radio ads, we haven't been able to measure at this time, but for our LinkedIn, we are definitely getting a flow and upcrease. We actually measure every week and it keeps going up. So thank you for continuing to do that. But yeah, the ad campaign is just keeping things top of mind for our trade area.
Perfect, thank you. And then of the new commercial that is being built, it's great to see all the action with it. Do we know if all of it is currently filled, or is there opportunity to fill some of it, or?
There's still opportunity.
There's still opportunity, okay. Thank you. And that's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I have no questions myself at this point. Ladies, thank you for the presentation. I'll make a motion that the June 11th, 2024 report, Economic Development, Investment, Attraction, Marketing Update Report, be received for information. Discussion of motion, members of council. Pardon me, a little stuffed up today. See no discussion. Council, would you please vote on the motion to accept the report as information? That carries unanimously. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda is item 6.5, Childcare Bus Program. Mr. Suter, I think you're back again with us this evening at this point. And your microphone is on. When you're ready, sir, please begin.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Before I start, I wanted to introduce a new staff member to council. I have with us two staff members out of our community services area. Our new manager of family and social services is Shiko Rakovo. She's behind me here. We're excited to have her on the staff here, and with me is Jody Oman she's the supervisor over at the childcare site and the school age site. So Jody will be the expert on this, just so you know. So I can go through the report.
No pressure.
I never claimed to be an SME in anything, so bear with me a sec. So this report is in response to a council motion back in December of 23 that we provide by the second quarter of 24, a report on feasibility of having the city invest in purchasing and operating its own bus for the primary purpose of addressing bus services required for the city's childcare program in comparison to how we're currently operating, which is a third-party contractor. Busing has been a challenge with Beaumont, with not owning its own bus in the past, and currently we're using stock transportation to provide transportation services for the childcare and the school age site. And as the benefit of having a contracted provider would be that, the managerial, the logistics, all those pieces are off-site. They're not on the city's liability and to manage and to program. However, the risk that is very evident is the cost uncertainty around a contractor, not just this one, but any potential contractor. We are currently in a 1 year here now, and then we would typically renew for 25 with a transportation provider. When you look through the first part of the report, council, a lot of that data is a replication of what you may recall from the business plan that was presented back in, I think it was November of 23, around there. Just comparing the cost increase back from the contract year of 2018, for example, up to where we are today, 23. And it's not unrealistic to expect a further increase for 25 with a contractor. That just seems to be the trend of everything these days. That never goes down. It seems to always go up, no matter who we would look for. Having said that, without putting it out for a potential other provider, it's tough to say what that looks like. We also have some data in there with some of the other services around, whether it be the schools or private operators. Administration had three options for council's consideration as this report. One is obviously the most obvious is status quo, where we would continue to use our current provider for 25 and beyond potentially, or seek a different provider to see what the cost looks like. And again, the risk to that is we just have cost uncertainty around that. We can't control what we get. We only have so many providers that be willing to provide that service, and we would look to mitigate the cost as best as possible, but again, they're outside our control. Option 2 would be a bit of a pivot, I guess, from the direction we've been following for some time now, which is cost recovery on this service. That would be something that council could entertain as some kind of subsidized program for the cost. It's 100% cost recovery now for that service. Those that use it pay their way. Those that don't pay. So that's obviously an option. And option 3 is what council was asking us to look into. And I don't know if they showed up in your package, but we had a couple of pictures in there just for illustration purposes. They're not specifically the exact item that we'd be talking about, but that just gives council a reference to the equipment that would be required. When the SME Jody and I were talking about this some time ago, we looked at what would be required to provide that service if we were to buy our own equipment. And at this time, we feel one 22-passenger bus with that sort of equipment that would make it accessible for that service if need be, as well as the potential of another vehicle, a 15-passenger van. So the combination of those two would be able to run the program. Some of these numbers that are in here are both capital and operating. The capital purchase numbers were a recent estimate that we were able to obtain through the cooperation with our fleet services. So as you can see, for the 22-passenger bus, we're talking 195,000, and the other costs were for fuel and insurance and registration and any other estimated for maintenance. There would be likely a maintenance contract to have to go along with that in some capacity. We may or may not be able to do that service in-house. And the second, for the 15-passenger van, 90,000 is the estimate for something like that, with the appropriate operational costs that you see in the report there. Now, the real rub around this is who drives it, who drives both. The beauty of having two would give us we'd be able to run the program as now to meet the needs. Additionally, if we have one vehicle down for maintenance, we have a backup that could just do 2 routes, like do the route again. So that would be our redundancy backup, if you will. But like I said, the issue is who drives it. We looked at a couple of scenarios, whether we would hire a specific driver for one or both, and the costs associated to that are just a best guess at this time, because that sort of role doesn't exist in the city right now, to have anybody on staff that is just a driver, which we would look to try to make use of that role if that was the direction, to do other duties, because realistically they're on the road for 3.5 hours out of, say, a 7-hour day. So there's capacity there to make use of that resource in another function, whether at that facility or maybe one adjacent or something similar. Or we do one driver and we use existing staff in some form, or we just go with existing staff. So, and every decision, or direction there would affect the impact operationally to the cost, which then of course is rolled down to the user per child per month. The challenge with that is making sure that we can get staff to do that role. You've got to take people out of the rooms now. You would have to have one on driving and one on the bus to provide supervision, which then means you've got to make sure you've got the proper amount of coverage. And I will invite Jody, if I'm saying something out of turn, she can speak up if I'm rolling along well. So that's the major disadvantage, not to mention the managerial logistical pieces that come along with that. It's difficult to do a job evaluation right now because we don't have that role, as I mentioned earlier, on the city. The number in there for a full-time employee is just a best guess, sort of centered around something that may be similar in duties that we have now, with the benefits and stuff that would come along with that. Any combination of those is definitely a consideration for option 3. The biggest plus to that, of having our own buses, our own vans, would be that we have some cost certainty. We can budget and guess appropriately. We have a one-time capital purchase. You know, these are properly maintained. They last for quite a while. The only variable would just be the employee costs. And of course, well, fuel is the only other one, I suppose, that would vary year to year. But we do have cost certainty. We're not at the mercy of a contractor and whatever they would throw at us to pay for. So that's the biggest plus. I think the other advantage, which is really hard to capture right now, I think we certainly need to look at this a little more. And it may be something that comes through a natural evolution of that if we had our own buses, is how could we use them in other ways? And some of the stuff that we put in the report touches on that. But again, it's very much, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea sort of commentary, but we don't know what that looks like. We don't know if the need to provide support for the youth center or some other recreational programs or the library programs or what that looks like, because the piece to that that's challenging is those would be used outside of the primary use. So therefore you've got to try to sandwich that in around the primary use, which is 3.5 hours during Monday to Friday to run the service for the childcare. Additionally, a lot of that programming may want to have a vehicle to help support the program, but then your after hours, your weekends, so it just becomes another challenge for drivers. So I don't want to throw that in as being a huge benefit at this time of option 3 of having our own equipment. But I do think there's potential in the future that we would look at that, and it may naturally start to evolve over time. But I just can't speak to it today as to the validity as to, is it a really, you know, is it a benefit to us or not in that way? It's hard to gauge that today. So at this time, Council, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, the report was for information purposes. There's a variety of ways the administration could proceed. At this time, it was just a preliminary investigative step to get some costs and some ideas of what we could do. But there's still a lot of work to do if we were to go down that road with just the logistical piece around the existing staff and what that looks like. So I hope I've outlaid that to Jody's satisfaction. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. Councilor Cook, you had brought this off consent agenda, so I'll go to you first for any comments and suggestions or comments or questions on the report. Councilor Cook, you have the floor.
I did. Thank you. Thank you for the information and the presentation. One of the reasons I wanted to explore this is because, just like you mentioned as well, I thought perhaps there would maybe be opportunity for the city to use it as well for other things, as well as some of the uncertainty I've heard from parents with the current providers as well. The reason I pulled it off is just for more clarity and understanding around the report. As you can imagine, some of us heard a fair amount when the prices shot up. I think it was this past year, higher than others in the city. I won't speak for all of council, but I think I'm at least still focused on some of the cost recovery piece. So that is still important because I think we did a lot of work to get there. So I think it's important to maintain that. Few questions. Do we currently use 2 different buses through our current contract, or do we use one? One? Okay. What's the size of the bus? 72 passenger. Okay. As per option 3, it states we would need 2 buses. Can you just explain a little bit why that would be?
I can try that. Well, the 2 would be twofold. One, it would provide enough seats. It's a more cost-effective approach than a 72-passenger bus, because I think that's a bit much. Likewise, it also gives us that redundancy option to, if one's down for maintenance or anything else, we've still got a vehicle that we could, even if we have to run the route twice, sort of thing, we can still provide the service, because otherwise we'd have to have a contractor on standby to reach out and do that if some other arrangements. So that presents a challenge, you know, during, especially early morning. Afternoon maybe a little easier to manage that, but early morning would be problematic.
Okay. How many children do we normally have on the bus? I know obviously it fluctuates from year to year, but kind of on average, is it more than 15 at one time, or is it?
This year, but I anticipate for September, we're going to be about
50? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, did we consult any other daycare agencies to kind of determine how they pay for their buses? I guess to just kind of be more direct, like what are they doing differently to charge $100 a month and charge that lower rate and operate it because they are for profit? And then how is it that it appears to be kind of cost prohibitive for us to do it? Like what am I kind of missing here?
They're using existing staff. So if we were to do the same, we would definitely be in the same ballpark as far as the numbers. The challenge is just we've got to make sure we can do that. We've got to get staff trained that are able and willing to do that work, and then make sure that we've got the proper coverage back in the room if you're taking people off the floor. So Jody would have to manage the staff. So there's definitely a logistical piece that needs to be flushed out if we go that direction. But when you look at the numbers, if we did it completely with existing staff, we're right around where we were in 2018 as far as per child per month. So we're basically very competitive then with how they're doing it.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last question.
One quick thing. Jody, could you come to the mic if you're going to speak? Make sure that everyone at home, thousands of people at home can hear you speak because we can't hear you. We can hear you inside, but we can't hear you on the recording system. So thank you very much. Please continue, Kat.
Just for next steps, you had mentioned the discussion around how else we can use it in the city, and it's kind of been higher level discussions. So I guess we could discuss further for notice of motion, but just for a little clarity on what kind of would be required for next steps as to get an understanding as to how else the city could potentially use something like this if we were to move forward with it.
Yeah, we need to spend some more time, obviously, fleshing out some of that. We had some preliminary conversation with the library, but it came back to the idea sounds great in principle, but how would it actually work? So we haven't been able to do the work on that yet and make sure. We've got some ideas in recreation. We've got some ideas around the youth center potentially. But again, the after hours, the weekend piece, that's a challenge because now you're still looking for someone to drive that. As far as next steps go, there's a couple different ways. Council can receive this information this evening. We can direct us to bring something back for budgetary consideration, more work that you want to have back. It's really up to council at this time.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like there's potential as we move some other things forward and have some discussions to discuss it further within the city. It's just maybe we're not there at this time.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to answer that, to be honest. There's more conversation for sure. It may lead into, like I tried to say earlier, I think it'd be an evolutionary process if we had our own bus as to where we might make use of that stuff in the future. I think today people say, yeah, that's great, but day one, we wouldn't have any use for it. So I think it would happen organically, potentially over time, but there's definitely more conversations required. I'm not sure if I'm helping you or not, Councilor McCook, but I think it's just too early at this point to say what that looks like.
Okay. Thank you. That's all for my questions right now.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Tanaluk. And thank you for the report. Really appreciate the time and effort that's gone into assembling this report. And I hope what comes back from that for folks is that when we receive the feedback, like Councilor McCook alluded to earlier, we do the work to look for synergies and ways to improve service while also always holding the line on what folks are paying for these services. So just a couple clarifying questions. I do see in the report that we're currently using a 72-seat bus, but it sounds like that outstrips what we need for seating by a fair bit. I think I probably know the answer to this question, but can you just let us know why we're renting a bus or securing a bus that's significantly bigger than what's required?
Yes, because the next size down wouldn't be big enough. So we have to use the 72.
So it comes down to what's available in the local market from
Otherwise, we have to get two
running
smaller buses, and then that would increase the contract.
So we've already looked at that angle then. Thank you for that. What can you tell me, what's the approximate numbers, not expecting you to have these memorized, although you might have them memorized. What would be the current wait list for our ELCC and SAS programs?
Currently, the wait list for the Early Learning Childcare Center is 18 to 24 months to get in. School age site has a few children,
okay,
not very many.
And do we have any indication that demands for these services is dropping off due to the increased cost of busing? Like, have you seen those wait lists shrink significantly?
Yeah, school age site waitlist has decreased. There's been additional out of school care programs that have opened, and they're opening near schools or in schools. So then they don't have to pay for busing. So that helps. Those parents some of our parents have left the program to go to those programs so that they don't have to pay for busing, as well as St. Andre, they don't have to pay for busing either.
And
or if they do, it's minimal.
Thank you. And it sounds like as those folks have left our program, others have filled those spots. But
yeah.
With the SAS school age site program specifically, we're running towards the end of that wait list. So that might stop happening in the
so what happens at this time of year is as children leave the school age site, I fill those spots with drop-in families because I need to move 20 kindergarten children down there at the end of August because they start grade 1.
Right.
So we're filling those spots with drop-in and trying to maintain revenues that way. And then on August 26th, I have children moving down to fill up those spots. So that's why come September 1st, the bus should be full. We'll have 53 children enrolled at school age site. And then if the expansion is happening as it's supposed to, then we'll have 30 children for kindergarten, and that will also increase ridership.
Right. So we're also anticipating needing more spots on the bus. So we'll be a little closer to capacity on that 72-seater if we do continue with that, but it also speaks to the demand for more seats with the 2-vehicle option if we go in that direction. So thank you for that. One conversation that's, I think, happening mostly in another department, but I mention it now by way of making sure that if there's need for some direction from council that we could give it. But just wanting to make sure that as we are having conversations for a proposed possibility of on-demand transit in the not too distant future in Beaumont, my question is, would there be any potential synergies there? My mind starts to percolate when we're talking about this is really an intensive period of each day when the busing is required, right? Going that route might cost us some of the benefits of having vehicles that we could use for other purposes in the city, but it's a question to which I would love to have the answer when we get to budget time and we're weighing pros and cons of several options and looking at kind of where the real priorities lie. So if that could be something that's just kind of made note of, I don't know if you're part of those conversations through your departments, or if you feel like you have an opportunity to ask that question, or if there would be further direction from council required.
Yeah, thanks for the question. If the administration is directed to do more work and for option 3 to explore this further, I would suggest that some of that could be part of that work, at least initially, to see if that's a feasibility piece or not. I can't speak to that at all tonight, obviously, but that would be, in my mind, that would be part of more work.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward. I think there's a lot of thinking and discussion that has to go on yet before I'm comfortable to move forward on any of these options. Something that jumped out at me was Star Catholic does provide busing to students attending all childcare programs, and that they're never denied that service, and it's relatively inexpensive, and the Black Gold can actually say, no, we can't. And I'm thinking our taxes go to both systems. So what is the problem with that? And I wonder if you have any further information on whether that has ever been explored. Is it worth advocacy from council on that particular issue? Just it seems very unfair. The children have to have, parents have to pay extra to get their children bused because they're using childcare. They may already be at a disadvantage. So from the point of view of social justice, it seems to me that this is really an unfair system. So I'm just wondering whether or not we have got any more information on that. Could we pursue that further? Anything you could tell me about that would be very helpful.
We don't at this time, Councilor Barnhart, but again, that could be something that we look at further, at least to see if there's any interest again. I'm understanding from the past, there was some preliminary investigation conversation started, but nothing materialized. But yeah, not unlike Councilor Penrod's question, I think that might be part of what's actually realistic to do in the future and what's not. But we need to definitely ask the question of them directly, I think.
Would appreciate that information if you do bring it back, because that to me is just something that jumps off the page. The taxes are already paying for the services, so we should be able to access that for all of our residents and not just the lucky few. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Warner. We're getting kind of a little off topic here. So CA Schwartz, do you want to jump in on a comment here before I go on?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Danilek. And yeah, from a process perspective, I was going to offer that there was a motion made for admin to bring back a report to look at one aspect of providing childcare busing. And what's happening now is this thing is ballooning and we're getting all kinds of ideas and all kinds of questions. So what I would suggest is we might want to bring it back to the report. And if there's further information that we need later on, that a notice of motion or direction be given.
Yeah. So reiterate that. So there's more information required from this report, an inquiry, notice of motion. We're trying to create a report as we're going forward. So I need to be a little more concise on our questions. And that's my responsibility to run a bit of a sharper meeting perhaps. So I'll endeavor to do that. Next is Councilor Telebus. You have the floor.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate the comments within the report to continue with that 100% cost recovery. It's taken a while to get to that point, and I think it's an important aspect to this. So really appreciate it if we do decide to go any of these routes. Second to that, I see in the risk analysis, in terms of the liability, if we're taking on that responsibility as a city, you know, unlike an incorporated business where they can shut the doors and go bankrupt, as a municipality, we don't have that option if things were to go south. So I'm just wondering if we explored that risk and the potential liability that comes with, you know, a serious incident or something along those lines involving one of our drivers, if we're going that route. And then just last question, just to put the two together, it also mentions that staff could potentially be drivers. Do we currently have staff with Class 4 status license, or is that something that they're open to?
As far as the insurance piece goes, I mean, that would fall under the city's insurance policy now. It wouldn't be just another service that we provide. So there'd definitely be coverage through that way. And we have not investigated the staff piece yet. That's something that we haven't entertained until we know if we're going to do more work on this or what kind of direction we want to go. So thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions from members of council, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report as information. And I'll move that the June 11th, 2024 report, Child Care Bus Program report, be received for information. Discussion on the motion, members of council? Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion to accept the report as information? Thank you, council. That passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you to our presenters for the information and your time this evening. Much appreciated. Next on our agenda is, well, we're at 7:37. We only have a break around 7:30, so we'll take about a short 5-minute break, and we'll come back at a roughly, let's say 7:45, dealing with our agenda. So we are in a recess till 7:45. Thank you. All right, good evening. We are back live after a short break. Next on our agenda is item 6.11. Pardon me, guys. We'll start, please. Thank you. Item 6.11, notice and following notice, Councilor Van Newkirk, joint recreation site. Councilor Van Newkirk, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I'd like to move that by the end of the third quarter of 2024, administration consult with Leduc County administration on the county's interest and ability to continue working towards the joint recreation site in partnership with the city, and that administration report back to council on the potential next steps and timelines for pursuing a joint recreation site.
Thank you, Councillor. Please speak to your motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I prepared a few remarks, so just bear with me for a second. As we know, it's very important to plan for the future, and in fact, it's the role of council and city administration. This motion is just that. It's setting the stage for collaboration with our neighbor, Leduc County. This conversation was initiated with a report completed in December of 2020 that concepted the use of county land to plan out a series of sports fields. Through conversations that I've had with our user groups, the theme that comes time and time again is that we need more fields and spaces for recreation. With Leduc County adding numerous residential lots and homes directly west of Beaumont, the need for these spaces in our region will continue to grow. So the basis for this motion is that we start a conversation. And the important piece for me that I would like to share with council is that the collaboration between Leduc County and our city administration is totally within the control of them. So we control the conversation together. We are able to concept and plan together. We're able to concept and budget into the future together. And it really, I think, will set the stage for some good collaborative planning for the future. So I'll leave it at that and look for your support in that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. With that, open to members of council for questions on the motion. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor to start with.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, I'm just wondering if this is in addition to or necessary, given that we have a committee that's between the county and the city that works on recreation. And I just wonder if that's already on the agenda or whether we need this in addition to that. So appreciate your comments.
Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Barnhart. The purpose for me putting this motion forward is to add some weight to that discussion, to ensure that we're using that time to collaborate together to work towards something more tangible, and that would be, some opportunities and some timelines to work together and build something. So there's no doubt that committee meets and talks, but the more that Leduc County builds and the more that our community grows, the more the needs grow together. So this is really to strengthen that conversation and ensure that it's working towards a tangible outcome. So,
thank you, councillors. Next, I have Councillor Markgraf-Swain, followed by Councillor Telebas. Councillor Markgraf-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing it forward. And I just think it speaks to your overall roundness as a councillor, Steve, just in terms of your relationships with the county, with some of the elected officials there, always working at all these different regional meetings you're at, always poking around and having thoughts. And so I know this motion doesn't come forward out of the blue, and you've done a lot of work on it. So thank you for that. The question I had is, you're right, Leduc County is growing significantly. We also have another regional partner, neighbor, who's also growing close to us in the city of Edmonton. Just curious on your thought process here. Obviously, the motion just speaks to Leduc County, but thoughts on why you excluded Edmonton out of this? Just you want to start small and then kind of broach it. How do you think about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think you nailed it with the start small, more regional conversation direct here and be able to expand to Edmonton. Right now, I see that Edmonton has a lot of challenges in front of them, and I just wonder about how this important piece to Beaumont and Leduc County may be received or prioritized by Edmonton. So I think that this motion would be open enough that should there be room in the conversation for Edmonton in a targeted way, that that the two administrations could work and identify that opportunity. But what I wouldn't want it to do is be a roadblock to us, moving forward and trying to establish some kind of a plan. I also left out of this too, what it should be. I said a joint recreation site. The original report spoke to, square fields, rounded fields. It need not stay at square and rounded fields, right? Maybe there's the next BSRC that is, a joint site planned somewhere. But I really just wanted to give the administration some latitude to have those discussions and see what comes of it. So I don't know if that is too long of an answer or pointed enough.
No, that's great. And what I also would encourage folks is, while this motion doesn't speak to that, if it passes and if that moves forward, I think that is worth, and Mayor, you're often in conversations with the city of Edmonton, and yes, they have their own challenges. But I think it's incumbent on us to continue to talk about this, to say, hey, look, we're thinking about this. You, particularly on those southern wards of Edmonton, your residents, we know that there's residents coming to Beaumont to use that rec center, and we don't get other than a small fee for entering that, we don't recoup any of that. So whereas the county does contribute operations, etc. So I support the motion, but would encourage folks who are out there talking to Edmonton, particularly in those southern wards, to talk about this more regional and see if this can get any uptick there. So thanks for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Telebus, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a pretty straightforward request, and I see a lot of value in it. No different than having a good neighbor. Why build two fences when you can build one and split it? And I'm not saying that's necessarily what's going to happen here, but collaborating with our neighbors and focusing on needs for everyone within both areas or regions is critical, because we're seeing growth everywhere. So support this, and I'm glad you brought it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further comments, I will be quick with myself. So piggybacking on the idea of Edmonton, I see where Steve is going with this. I understand where he's coming from. We had a good conversation about this motion, and I do plan to support it. I don't see any point at this point about adding a friendly to include Edmonton down the road possibly, but I think the conversation is our most immediate neighbor, who we do share a border with all the way around us, and we do have an existing cost sharing arrangement where they do provide funds for us for our rec center, for our sports fields, and so on a percentage basis of our capital costs. So I think prepared to support the motion at this point. So seeing no further discussion from any members of council. Council, any last comments? Steve, it is your motion. I usually ask one last comment if you wish.
All I would say, Mayor, just to wrap this up, is that the opportunity really here is to make sure that we're, creating a tailor-made, custom, potentially phased-in solution for Beaumont and Leduc County to meet residents' needs into the future. That's where we're at, and we're in control of that conversation together. The phasing, the planning, and land acquisition or not, operations or not, cost sharing or not, all of those things are on the table at this infancy here. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Councilor Newkirk. My apologies. Seeing that, no further questions or comments, I'll ask council to vote on the motion on the screen before you. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Council. Next on our agenda is our councillor inquiries, responses, and reports. Are there any councillor inquiries this evening, or responses or reports? Seeing none, we'll move on. The next item agenda is number 8, CAO update. Mr. Schwartz, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Danyluk, members of council. I'll be brief. From Protective Services and our urban coyotes, the contractor is still responding to calls from ME on the sightings throughout the city. So the efforts to relocate the coyotes are ongoing, and we just ask our residents to be careful. They're typically more afraid of you than you are of them. From infrastructure parks perspective, the Juno Park Drainage Project is currently underway. So if you drive down 50th Street, you'll be able to see that. The goal is the completion for summer 2024. The spray park is officially open, and you can see the hours there. The hours are subject to change depending on weather conditions and what we anticipate to be some water conservation efforts. We know it's a favorite spot, so we're committed to try and keeping it open, but also ensuring that water is available for essential needs like firefighting and drinking. Roads and engineering, the city would be installing temporary curb extensions and temporary medium at the intersection of 58A Street and 56A and 55th Avenue, and also at Rue Montelena later this month. And those will be in place till mid-October as traffic calming measures. We'll be launching communications as we did previously to let people know what is going and why they're there. From community services, Summer in the Park returns this July. It's a drop-in program for outdoor activities for children under 13 on weekdays, and you can see the hours there. This will all be posted afterwards. And one other late addition, and I see that Rebecca already got it put up there, so thank you very much. Over the next few weeks, we've got some exciting changes coming to Centreville. The Esprit mixed-use building on 50th Avenue and 50th Street will start construction, and the foundations for their building, if you're driven by there, they're digging as we speak. It's a 6-story, and it features 141 dwelling units and 3 commercial retail units, along with a daycare facility. This development aims to provide both commercial space and much needed housing rental units to the Main Street district. For more details, there's a link to you can find the notice of decision and approved drawings on our website, and we will post that link. pretty exciting. That was the project, if you recall, that was on again, off again, and now it's back on again. So that's good. And there's actual movement on the site. So thank you very much for the planning for providing that update. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO Schwartz. Any questions for the CEO for his update? Seeing none, thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for that update. Next, our agenda is notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening, any members of Council? All right, seeing none, thank you, Council. Next, our agenda is closed session. So I'll ask the motion be put on the screen. I'll move us into closed session, and then we'll continue our meeting accordingly. I move that Council move into closed session at 7:57 p.m. pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, Sections 24 and 25. Discussion on the motion, members of Council? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on the motion to move in camera? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. We will take a brief moment here to... Thank you. We are back live after a closed session at 9:21 this evening. We do have one motion arising from our closed session. Madam Clerk, would you please put the motion on the screen, which I'll make? Thank you. I move that the sale of Lot 33, Block 9, Plan 1521520, 5608 30th Avenue Civic Address, in accordance with the revised terms as set out in the June 11th, 2024 report, municipal land disposal, be approved, and that the report remain confidential pursuant to Section 24 and 25 of the Freedom of Information and Protection Privacy Act. I see no need to speak to that motion. I'm prepared to support it. Any members of Council have any questions or concerns on this motion before I go to the vote? Seeing none, Council, would you please vote on the motion as read out? And that carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, Council. With that, that does conclude the last piece of business this evening at our Council meeting. We are adjourned at 9:22. Thank you and enjoy your evening.